question that comes up too often is, did the time come for the Jewish people to go back to Eretz Israel? So in order to answer that question, we want to try and look into the history of the Jewish people, understanding the four exiles. We know that right now we're at the tip, the end of the fourth exile. And during our parshiot, our Torah portion, we see clearly the beginning of the first exile, Yetziat Mitzrayim, the leaving of Egypt. Now, the exile of Egypt is the prototype of all later exiles, and therefore we want to try to pinpoint the exact actions of our ancestors in order to understand how we can cope now, thousands of years later. So when we go over the text, we see as following. The pasuk says, "Vayered Mitzrayma, vayigor sham b'mtei me'at, vayisham legoy gadol atzum beram." We went down to Egypt as immigrants, small circle, and there we became numerous and a powerful nation. A very familiar story. Jewish people reach a land, they grow, they prosper, and all of a sudden the locals start to get annoyed. Now, when Yaakov gets the story, the third of our fathers, that he gets the information that his son Yosef is still alive, he heads down to visit his son, who is now the treasurer of the great Egypt. And on the way there, he sleeps, he takes a nap, and in his dream, Hashem comes to him and tells him, Yosef yoshit yado al einecha. He says to him, Yaakov, do not worry. Your son Yosef, he knows what he's doing. He has a game plan. He's been in Egypt for the past 22 years, and he's grown and he's prospered, both materialistically and spiritually. He knows what he's doing. Trust him. Go with his plan. So now let's go over a little bit the text and see how things played out. Yosef goes to meet his brothers, and he tells them exactly what he's going to tell Paro, and he asks them, please make sure that we are saying the same things, which is what? We are shepherds. All our lives we have been shepherds, our fathers are shepherds, and Yosef tells them the reason for this is because he doesn't want Pharaoh to come and to try and make them part of his army, part of his hierarchy. So shepherds was something that was an abomination for the Egyptians. Tell him you're a shepherd, and that's exactly what happened. Yosef makes sure that the weakest of his brothers come with him to meet Paro, so Paro doesn't get any ideas. And Yehuda, the leader of the tribes, gets a commandment to build a yeshiva, a spiritual center in the city of Goshen, where the Jews will now be living. Now, when we look at this, it's interesting that Paro, even after hearing that the brothers are shepherds and to hear that you see the five weakest of them, he still tells Yosef, I want them to be officials, and if you know any of them that are talented, please bring them forward. We say yearly in the Haggadah of Pesach, Yaakov Avinu, when he went down to Mitzrayim, he had no intentions to settle. They wanted to come, to let the hunger pass, and head right back to Eretz Israel. But when we look into the Ramban, he teaches us that Yosef had a slightly different approach. He wanted his brothers and his family to be fully integrated citizens. He settled them in the choices of land, the city of Ramses, acquiring properties for them, fields, vineyards. Yosef didn't want his brothers to feel different than anybody else. From a certain perspective, it even seems that Yosef embraced his new life. When we look at the names he gave his children, Menashe and Ephraim, both names are coming to embrace. Menashe is about forgetting his Neshani et Beit Avi, his old life. And Ephraim, She'efani be'eretz onyi, that in my new land, in the land that I was supposed to be afflicted, I became multiple, I've grown. We see that Yosef is making the best of the exile. The Holy Zohar teaches us that Goshen became an eternal inheritance, where the Jews lived with all the luxuries in the world. Yosef, though, never forgot that all of this is just temporary. When we actually look into things, we see that he was the one to promise his brothers that Hashem will take them out of Egypt and return them back to the homeland. Pakod yifkod. And Yosef, also, it's brought down in the Midrash Shemot Rabbah that out of all of the tribes, Yosef's youngest son Ephraim, they were the ones that were so excited to return back to the land of Israel that 80 years before Yetziat Mitzrayim, before the Jewish nation left Egypt, they tried to leave, and they actually lost 300,000 people because of that. So Yosef had a great love for Eretz Israel. Another midrash really emphasizing this, speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu that comes to God and says, why is it that Yosef gets to be buried in the land of Israel and I am not going to be buried there? Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu that you did not acknowledge the land the way Yosef did. Because Yosef, even though it was detrimental for him to basically characterize himself as a Hebrew, when he was in jail and he was talking to the cupbearer, he told them, I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews. And the Midrash continues and says that Moshe Rabbeinu heard the daughters of Yitro call him an Egyptian man, and he was silent. So we see, although we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu and it's way above our understandings, but we see Yosef's love for the land was unprecedented. And we try to understand and grasp these two things, how they work out together. From one side, we see that Yosef is focused on making his brothers citizens and succeeding in the new land, embracing the new land. But on the other side of things, we see that he's so focused on going back to Eretz Israel. Now, when we look at his efforts, it's clear that he was not trying to make the Jewish people more suitable for Egypt, rather Egypt more suitable for the Jewish people. We see this, that he circumcised all of the Egyptians. He shifted population so that his brothers wouldn't feel out of place. And we know famously that he gave a special status to the priest, that therefore later on our priests, the Levi'im, would be able to be exempt from all kinds of different things. So Yosef is preparing the land for the Jewish people, that we could live and succeed and prosper in this place, both materialistically and spiritually. The Gemara in Masechet Pesachim says Yosef gathered all the money in the world and brought it into Egypt. And when the Jews left, they took that money with them. The Zohar teaches us that any place the Jewish people are, there is a reason, there's a purpose. We actually bring life force to that place. And one day, the nations of the world will understand that. But no matter what we do, no matter where we are, what we have to remember is that we're here for a reason. And our job is to incorporate the host country in the proper way by channeling our success towards our final destination. So the question of is it time to leave or not time to leave is not really the question. The question is, are we doing our job where we are? Because if we are utilizing everything we have, our resources, to succeed in our host country, in order to take it to the next step, to be more spiritual in our final redemption, to take everything towards that, then that means that our mission is accomplished here where we are now, and hopefully as soon as possible, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring us the Geulah b'karov mamash.